Welcome into Hitting Hard on Locked On Sports Atlanta. I am Jon Chuckery, and a few things to cover from over the weekend. Expectations for Drake London this year. It was a really good weekend for the Atlanta Braves. We'll recap that. And don't sleep on how many first rounders Georgia may have in next year's NFL draft. It's all coming up today on Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Welcome into a Monday edition of Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery. We are asking you, of course, to head over to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your browser and search us and find us and subscribe. We are headed toward 1,000 subscribers, so we really appreciate everybody being a part of the show. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think, give us feedback, good, bad, or otherwise on what we talk about here. And, of course, you can always follow me on my Twitter page. That would be at JMCH316. All right. Seen a lot of things on the podcast for Locked On Sports Atlanta, Falcons podcast, reading about this and the other, about the expectations of Drake London. Now, on one of the betting services, Drake London is the favorite to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's all fine in this and the other, but I caution people to be careful how they evaluate Drake London in this first year. Let's talk about a few things. First off is the quarterback. So Matt Ryan the last 4 years has averaged 600 pass attempts a year over the last 4 years, okay? Marcus Mariota's best year ever throwing the football is 453. So you're talking about 150 less attempts between the average of the last few years of the quarterback we had and the best, highest, tippy top of the iceberg number that this year's quarterback is going to have. So you don't have a quarterback that is a huck it around, throw it all over the yard kind of guy. Now, the other part of this is there are still lots of issues that go on with the Falcons and their offense, mainly blocking up front. For Drake London to make an impact in a game, about 5 things have to happen? You have to get a good snap, right? Your offensive line has to be able to block. Your quarterback has to be able to read the play and move around and find him open. Then your quarterback has to make at least an semi to accurate throw in his general area. And then the wide receiver goes and catches the pass, and now we have a play, right? So all of these little dominoes have to fall before all of that happens and Drake London can make an impact on a football field. And this is not a knock against Drake London and what he can or cannot be. It's just that when you're asking this wide receiver, because again, people are going to look at Drake London being selected 8th and say, well, he's got to be 1,000 yards in this, that, and the other. Okay, Kyle Pitts was 1,000 yards and just the 1 touchdown. Did he have a good year? Yes. Did he have a really impactful year? Certainly not in the Jamar Chase type of realm as far as impact goes. If you told me Drake London was 1,000 yards and 1 touchdown, would I consider that to be a successful season? No. I'd rather have Drake London be 750 yards and half a dozen touchdowns than I would for him to put up a lot of bad stats, empty stats for a team that doesn't win a whole lot of games. That's the thing you have to be cautious about with wide receivers is it's not so much that they don't play as well or this and the other. What kind of impact are they going to have on the game? And listen, I've said before, and I have talked to Arthur Smith. I've interviewed Arthur Smith a few different times. I would love to know really what our offensive philosophy is because, again, Arthur Smith comes from a franchise in the Tennessee Titans that was a very heavy run-first offense, right? You had a great offensive line, a lot of studs up front, and you had the best running back in the NFL. Now, we don't have either of those We're running back by committee, multiple heads, offensive line gets gashed through the middle, your right tackle's not very good. So there's a lot that has to be figured out. But I think we all agree that, especially with a guy like Marcus Mariota, you'd much rather have a little bit more balanced type of attack. Whereas we're 600 passes to less than 400 runs, you'd like to see those two numbers start to come together a little bit more. And obviously, if you're throwing it less than they have been and you're running it more, that's less opportunity. Doesn't mean that Drake London can't have some impact. Doesn't mean that he can't do some good things to help this team win. And we'll probably talk tomorrow about some of Arthur Smith's comments to Peter King and Monday Morning Quarterback about winning and this, that, and the other. Because if you're hoping for tanking, that's not going to happen. But I have seen people speculate that, London could be the offensive rookie of the year, this, that, and the other. Don't know if he comes into a situation that lends itself to that. I don't know if you start to look at some of the rookie receivers and pass catchers that are going to Pat Mahomes or going to Matt Ryan or this, that, and the other, that they're going to be in a situation here in Atlanta to have a massive impact on the game. And I think that with a quarterback like Marcus Mariota, don't be surprised if Kyle Pitts is probably your leader in targets. If they don't throw to the running backs a lot more, that's certainly something that I've wanted to see out of this offense over the last few years, is getting running backs more into the passing game. Well, obviously, Patterson is that running back / hybrid. You don't have Mike Davis anymore, who was a good pass catching running back, but if you throw it to Ollison or you throw it to Algier, the kid that they just drafted out of BYU, or this, that, and the other, get them in the mix. But I think that you're going to be probably surprised at Drake London. And I don't say this in a bad way. Surprised at maybe his number of targets and things like that. Drake London's got to learn the position. He's got to learn to get open. Look, when Drake London lines up right now, he most likely has the other team's number one corner on him, which, yeah, that's trial by fire, right? But not going to make it easy for your wide receiver to start to get in the mix. And if you think about, look, Kyle Pitts was slow to get into the mix. We saw early in the year when it wasn't so many targets, or he wasn't even on the field in some red zone situations, that you kind of scratch your head like, wait a second, he's the 4th overall pick. Shouldn't he be out there? Yeah, but sometimes guys don't work themselves in. I'll tell you what will be different than what we've probably seen in the past is I fully expect Drake London to get a heavy workload in the preseason. I do think that we will see a good bit of Kyle Pitts and we'll see a good bit of Drake London, because you're going to need more than just training camp and some practices, and especially the way the NFL practices where they barely get together for any practice. You're going to need more than those little events. Typically, when you've seen top flight wide receivers, this, that, and the other, they kind of get slow worked in. And if you have a veteran quarterback, you don't worry too much about it. But I think this year, and we've already heard from Arthur Smith, that the preseason will be different this year. Pitts only played, 4 snaps in the preseason. Don't be surprised if he doesn't play more. And I fully expect Drake London to play more in the preseason. But don't get hung up on the raw numbers. Don't let the raw numbers fool you into believing about what Drake London can or what his impact is or this and the other. I think the situation just dictates that there may be some slowness out of the gate and just the idea of what our offensive philosophy is going to be. All right, when we come back, really good weekend for the Braves. Ronnie's ready. That's all I'll tell you. Ronnie's ready. Let's talk some Braves when we get back. It's Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.